Believe it or not, not every map on the LOLMAPS server is a good one. I know, it's a big surprise. But when you have a public server where just about anybody is allowed to add whatever maps they want, you'll find that some are a little bit more lazily made than others. Some are kind of boring to play, while others are just an absolute chore to make it through. So those are the types of maps we're going to be looking at today. Now, this is not to rip on the mappers at all, I just find it funny to make fun of some of these. So let's start out with one called 400cc LOL49. I think many people will recognize the name Dodo, as he has something like 300 maps on the server, most of them being super old and basic maps. So in this one, you just take a straight line through a little dirt jump, and then you drive this straight loop right into the ground and then into the finish, which is pretty boring on its own. But you're basically just throwing yourself at the wall over and over again, hoping for a cleaner landing so that you can drive into that finish a little bit faster. By the way, I did not come up with this list of maps based on the karma rating. In fact, I did not even see what rating they had when I put the list together, so let's see if all of them really do have negative scores. Next up, we have a Citrax map, no surprises there. Now on the surface, this one looks pretty simple. You just kind of drive around this basic loop and that's all. Except that since there are no checkpoints throughout that whole thing, the only valid way of getting a good time is to do this overwall jump, which isn't always a bad thing if the whole map is revolved around some kind of cut like this. Except that you just barely don't have enough speed to make that jump. So again, you're just throwing yourself at the wall over and over again, waiting to get some kind of clean landing. And especially when these maps get really old like they are, the leaderboards get so stacked that if you even want any kind of chance of ranking on the leaderboard, you're gonna need a really clean cut. Alright, here's one called Crazy Track. So it starts with a loop, but it looks like you're pretty much expected to loop cut and do a barrel roll through it. But then it just kind of drops down and changes directions. There's no clean transitional way to do this. You're just going down one hill, and then it rotates 180 degrees to go down the other way. There's a few finish lines, which if you go through them, you've pretty much already screwed the whole run, because you have to be going down the middle to take another barrel roll, and if you're lucky, you'll make it clean in. But what I find so awful about this one is just dropping yourself down from this upper platform, constantly landing upside down. I don't know that I've ever gotten a checkpoint like that. A lot of these maps can kind of be described as like, you ever try and take a really cheesy route where it's not a very fluid route, it doesn't feel like you're supposed to be doing it that way, but it is just the fastest or the easiest way? Well, on maps like this, it feels like no matter what you do, there is no clean way to do the map. Alright, here we have another Citrax map. Now this one drives a lot of people crazy. It's basically just this wide open room with checkpoints just hidden around in random spots, and you just kind of have to wander around until you find the checkpoints and then wander even longer to find the finish line, and then there's lots of little pitfalls and dead ends everywhere that you can get stuck in. Honestly, this map kind of looks like a Mario Kart 64 battle arena map, but have fun just driving around in circles looking for checkpoints. Also, I have no idea what this plus is supposed to be. Alright, here's a fun one. So we have the starting line, a little dirt loop, and then over to the finish. Except that the dirt part is way higher in elevation, so you gotta find some way of climbing up there. It's very awkward to transition. You're just gonna be throwing yourself at this dirt wall over and over again, not going anywhere. And then as soon as you touch the checkpoint, you just turn right back around and drive in the finish. Also, so far, if you guys have been paying attention, it does seem like every map I've shown has a lot more downvotes. Alright, let's look at another Citrax map. They're not all Citrax, I swear. The first few were just a coincidence. So in this map, there's just this giant arena, a bunch of pieces just randomly thrown around here. I guess you're supposed to just do a little bit of platforming before finding where the heck you're supposed to reach the finish. I mean, once you figure out where to go, it's not too hard, but again, it's just like, who would have thought that this is what you're supposed to be driving on in a racing game? I mean, I just have to question, like, so many pieces that are in here. Like, what was he on when he decided, yeah, this is exactly what I want the map to look like? Okay, moving on to a map called Frustration. So just like one of the earlier ones, this seems like the map itself isn't so bad, but since there's a very obvious but annoying cut, that's basically the only valid way of driving the map. And so here we've got to drive off the ramp to the other ramp, and then turn back around and try and drive through this little cut. But it's so easy to just not have enough speed, so you just can't make it up through there. But at least the map lives up to its name. Alright, here's a map just called Girl. Why would they call it that? Oh. Yeah, this is just one that's fairly boring to drive. I suppose that if you're really into precision and you want to be able to hug the wall as close as possible, it can be kind of interesting. But the last time I saw this map come up in Shuffle, it got skipped within like 30 seconds. Alright, some of the maps so far have been somewhat acceptable, but I think this might be the worst one yet. So this map is called It's My bday. It's got 7.5 downvotes and no upvotes. There's only a handful of people who've bothered finishing it, and my PB is nearing 4 minutes. So the first half of of this map is just driving around a couple of walls, clearly not in a very smooth way, just to touch this checkpoint. But then the second half is even worse, because there's some elevated pathways that you have to jump onto, and then you need to build up enough speed off of this little road to then do a very precise side ramp barrel roll jump into the finish line. It's like you gotta pull off 3 tricks in a row for this, and all 3 of them are just like the most awkward and annoying things possible. And so here I am just throwing myself at this jump over and over again, trying to figure out what the heck I'm supposed to be doing to reach it. And it looks like I'm not gonna beat my personal best. In fact, it looks like I'm not gonna finish at all. Wait, what the heck? There's an extra finish down on the ground? I didn't even see that until the map was already over. Alright, now we're talking. You can tell a lot of thought went into this map. It looks like it's made up of about 5 different track pieces, and no matter which way you go, you're gonna have to do some really awkward U-turns on the grass, which really sucks because you cannot hold grip at all, and it's also too small of a spot to grass slide. So if you go forwards, you gotta travel a longer distance, but going backwards is harder to build up speed. So it's just, no matter which way you try to do this, it feels so awkward. You know, when a lot of these maps load up, I think like, yeah, maybe I'm going too hard. Maybe this map isn't that bad. And then I see the like to dislike ratio on them. So a few things make this map kind of annoying. So there's 3 different ways you can take it. You can try going up this ramp, jumping up over the finish, and then turning around to go inside. You can try and turn right, and then have to make a sharp 180-degree turn right after a booster. Or you can just throw yourself at this wall and hope that you bounce over it. All 3 of these options are pretty terrible. And what I hate about option maps like this is that you're not sure which one is the fastest, but you've really got to pick one and keep trying it over and over again. And you can't tell if you're getting a bad time because you're doing it poorly, or if it's because you chose the wrong route. Alright, here we have a map called LOL Map number 1. We found it, guys. It's the very first ever LOL map. So the first half of this is definitely a noob killer, because you have to line up this jump with no steering, and you need to be really precise to be able to not hit the wall, not hit the pole, be able to go up the ramp and not hit the checkpoint, and still make it over to the other road. Now that part is annoying enough, but then you drive around this big, long, boring stretch, and then at the end you get met with this, where you drive up this ramp, think you're throwing yourself into the finish line, but instead you just land right in this hole. So it just goes from annoying to boring to annoying again. Alright, here we've got another map that's lacking a few checkpoints again. There's a few flat road pieces, just making not a lot of sense. And as it turns out, the fastest way to go about it is to just turn around right at the start and cut across the grass. You know, one thing that's actually really funny about these maps is that no matter how bad a map is, you'll still have so many like high-level players that just can't help but hunt the best time on it. Like when a map like this comes up in Shuffle, a lot of people will just choose to sit out and not play it. But it's just so funny to me that a lot of high-level players will be like, I don't care how bad it is, I still gotta be the fastest, I'm gonna hunt this. Alright, next map called Mini in 2. You launch yourself up a wall, flip yourself back, run into a wall, and drop through the checkpoints just to turn around and drive through the finish line. Now that's if you're lucky. What usually happens is you'll just hit the wall and then miss the checkpoints, or you'll land upside down. Your whole time just relies on you getting a clean landing down on the ramp, which tends to be very luck-based. Because, yeah, usually you'll just end up flopping around once you land, and you won't even get to drive to the finish. Alright, this map drove me crazy because it's a little bit deceiving. So if you just drive straight through, you'll be able to just drive straight to the finish line. It won't be very fast, but it's not very hard to reach it. And so what it looks like you're supposed to do is to make this like side transfer over to this other ramp and then do a jump from there. And so it's like baiting you into thinking it's some smooth transitional map, except that the transition isn't smooth no matter how clean you try to do it. And even if you do get full speed on that, you'll hit the ceiling on this jump, so you can't even make the last jump if you try going to the side. So yeah, the proper way is to just go right down the middle and try to reduce the amount of speed you lose on the hill. So it pretends to be an interesting map, but it's actually just really lame. Man, I chose to not record all these maps during a busy time, but even now, nobody wants to play these maps. Alright, let's look at Rot's Race. So my first impression of this is, okay, maybe I need to drop straight down, build up all of the speed from falling, and then loop back into the finish line, except that that loop doesn't actually lead you to the finish line. You're stuck underneath it. So there's just these like random ramp pieces covering up where the finish line is, and you've got to drop way down and land on one of them, and then just drive into the finish from there. It just seems like, what's the point? How are you supposed to do this smooth anyway? Maps like this really make me question where people's thought process is when they decide to publish a map. Okay, let's take a look at a map called Slow and Steady. So we've got a long stretch of boosters right into a tall ramp. Alright, I'm guessing the ramp is supposed to launch us back towards a finish line somewhere behind us. But no, I don't see the finish line. So where is the finish? Oh, it's just underneath this ramp. So I guess you're just supposed to drive full speed down this long stretch and then stop before you hit the ramp so that you can slowly crawl down to the lower level and drive through the finish line. Yeah, talk about a smooth transition there, where the most efficient way of doing this is to actually drive up against the wall to slow yourself down so that you don't go flying off the map. Is it any surprise that all these maps have so many downvotes? Like this next one. Now, maps like this, I always have to wonder, like, am I just understanding this wrong? Because this map does not make any sense to me. So like you drive full speed off this jump so you can make it through the checkpoint, and then you just don't really land anywhere. You just throw yourself at this wall, and then once you land, then it's time to just turn around and drive over to the finish line. And half the time you try to drive into this wall, you just end up getting stuck. You know, with so many maps like this, I have to wonder, like, how is it that somebody throws all these random pieces together and then just says, well, there's a starting line, a few checkpoints, and a finish line. That looks like a map to me, and just hits publish. Same with this one, TMP Quickie. I mean, to start off, it's always annoying when there's just random track pieces going in different directions. But alright, let's drive up through this fortress and come out the other side. We'll go through this checkpoint, and now there's just a bunch of boosters driving you straight into the walls. A bunch of really sharp turns, which you're never going to be able to make at these high speeds. And it just wraps back around to the finish line. I feel like this map is a really great lesson on how to not make maps. This is another one where you're thinking, like, am I going the wrong way? Is it faster to try and go backwards? But nah, this really is the only way to go. And you know, it'd be one thing if these were just maps that somebody made and just kept it to themselves. Maybe it was not even finished. But these are maps that were published onto a public server and have been played by hundreds, if not thousands of people over the course of many years. But that's gonna be it for this first volume of terrible LOL maps. Which of these maps do you guys think was the worst out of all of them? Now, like I said, I didn't just sort maps by most downvotes. The way I came up with this list was I went through all like 9,000 something of my replays since I've played every map on the server, and I just marked down the names of the worst ones I could find. So I've got quite a few more videos like this coming in the future. So I will see you guys next time.